Thank you. Hello everybody, welcome to the Moy Hall here in Airdrie. I'm with Garry Sweeney once again. Garry, we're back in Airdrie for a second time. The last time we had a massive live audience, it was about 2 years ago. Things are a wee bit different now. How's it feel to be back?
Absolutely. No, I'm quite happy to me grab that.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. No, you take your mics quiet, I'll say out loud.
You heard mine and I heard yours.
Is that a proper offer?
Cheeky bitch.
No, I was saying to them there just now, like 2 seconds ago, how nervous I was coming out that night. There was what, 50, 60 people in the audience?
150.
150? Well, there you go, you know. So this is, it's a wee bit quiet and stuff like that, and it's a good thing, because I don't think I've spoke to as many people in about 15, 16 months, so always a good thing.
Well, we do have a small studio audience here with us tonight. Some people who were here at the last show with Jimmy Chisholm as well. And we've also got some people watching in their houses at home, so hello to you guys, thanks for tuning in. So, Garry, what's some of the people here were at the show before.
Okay.
But for those watching and for those that weren't here, let's start right back at the beginning. We'd like to find out how your career started and sort of, so where did you grow up and how did you get into acting? Because I think you were 18 or something before you got into acting.
Well, it's usually the school thing first and foremost. I was like your typical
drama school.
Not quite drama school. I'm talking about like school, as in like Holyrood school. And it's that way. I was always a not very well behaved boy, put it that way. But drama was the one thing. I had a drama school teacher, basically Mr. Black and Mrs. Skillen, who kind of really pulled me out for that. So when it came to like kind of choosing your subjects and stuff, I'd done a couple of school shows like your West Side Stories, your Oklahomas, stuff like that. And that kind of gave me, not to get cliched about it, but like the bug, it kind of made me go, I quite like that, I quite enjoy doing that. So when it came to like 5th year and choosing my subjects and stuff, I remember my drama teacher coming to speak to me and saying, I've got a placement here at this place called Glasgow Art School. Not Glasgow Art School, the Glasgow Arts Centre. So I kind of went along to that, and it was like Bobby Carlyle and a lot of actors that were a lot older than me. Don't get me wrong, I never worked with them, but they were there the kind of like the year before me. I was 15, 16 at the time, and I think the director ended up giving me like a kind of silly walk-on part, and it just worked out in my favour that one of the actors got really sick, so I ended up playing one of the main parts. And that kind of gave me, the taste for it to go. But it was still one of the things that, your pals and your parents, you're like, an actor, behave yourself. I went away to Torquay. I worked there, I ended up following a bird to Torquay when I was about 16, 17. Went there for 6 months, sold everything that I had in my flat at the time, like my stereo, blah, blah, blah. Went to Torquay, loved it, just partied up for like 6 months. And then it was a case of winter was coming, he'd done, and I ended up going to a place called Newton Abbot, and I became a baker. So that lasted 6 months, and then after 6 months I missed my mammy, and I was like, I'm going to get back up the road. So I went back up the road, and then I remember coming home and being like, it was like seeing a thing for Langside College. There was a Langside College, I'm sure it was Clydebank at the time. So it was a case of just getting a bit of guts about you and going, go for it. And I'm sure I got a wee daft thing from Gregory's Girl that I kind of done as a piece. And I went into Langside, and that was kind of the start for me.
So now, you guys, what's the first thing you remember seeing Garry in? Let's see how far back we can remember.
Still Game.
And do you remember in it before Still Game? And Small Faces?
No, I'm glad somebody says Small Faces, because that's the first thing I ever done was a film called The Near Room, which was David Heyman's movie. And it was through that I got Small Faces.
Who else was in The Near Room? Because that sounds familiar.
James McAvoy, I think I was with James McAvoy.
Oh, he's done a wee bit of acting, hasn't he?
First, he's just a wee bit, no. But I'm sure it was a boxer they were looking for. I'm sure at the time, this is years ago, man. I'm sure they were looking for a boxer, and I went along. I never got cast as that. That was James McAvoy that got cast as that. And I ended up playing like a younger David O'Hara, who's the mad Irish guy out of Braveheart. Have you ever seen Braveheart? No, the mad Irish guy with the long hair, that's him.
So that was The Near Room, that was your first
sort
of
the
TV project?
First thing, and I was bollock naked with my airsuit and everything that was meant to be.
They'll want to know that if you've got the YouTube link for that.
I've never seen it since, probably the last time my arse looked half decent, in fairness. But I remember doing that, and it was like Davey Heyman at the time, so it was like naked shower scene. I've meant to have just been raped. So I'm banging my head off this 1, 2, 3 takes, and then I just remember David Heyman coming up. I'm a smoker, but I'm just ripping the tip off the fag and going, there you go, kiddo, smoke that. So that was my introduction to film, that was my introduction to telly. And then through The Near Room, they kind of open auditions for Small Faces, and I think I had about 2 or 3 auditions for that, and then basically get cast in that, and I was just like, wow.
Now, would that have been your first introduction to Ian Robertson?
It was indeed. Ian was a smout at that time. I'm trying to think, what age would I have been when I done Small Faces. I'm about 18, 19. So that would make Ian 12, if you're lucky, like 12, 13. But Ian was really, because we were all like kind of virginal actors, but Ian was like 12. Do you know, no fear in the world. So when you're working with a camera for the first time, Ian would be behind you giving it that, making faces. So we all wanted to do him in. We were all like that. You cheeky, but he's grown up now. But yeah, he was a right cheeky wee sod. So he was doing Small Faces.
So when did you first experience people recognising in the street? Where did that come from?
Funny, like, what I always used to get, it's funny, like Still Game, obviously, we do Still Game, and I think Still Game was one of these things that, when it came on at that period in time, because I think I was like 2002, 3, something like that, I filmed that. But it was one of those things, I think, that was really, really popular at the time, but see, because of like box sets and word of mouth and things like that, and it became absolutely massive, because I'm old enough to remember like Scotch and Rye, as you are as well, Ross.
No.
So there was always, I don't lie, you're older than me, behave. But I think when Still Game, when Tune the Fat and Still Game, I remember people of a certain generation when Tune the Fat came on were like, oh, it's a bit crude, it's a bit this, it's a bit that. But it was kind of moved with the times, you know. So what I'm saying is, when it first started, as much as it was popular, again, because of box sets and word of mouth and people talking it up, eventually it became. So doing Still Game something like 18 years ago, and you'll still get people going like, you know, screaming, I can't remember my line in it, but you know, like, aye, my line's in it, and that's like, that's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
You know, it's funny because I did remember you from River City, and I thought, I know that guy's face from something, I couldn't quite place it, and it was just one day it comes up, Still Game, and there you are, and it was, of course, if you didn't remember Garry and Still Game, it was the Ned who, what was the actual? Yes, and of course with the famous dog, Kaiser the dog.
Kaiser, by the way, that was just for one of my memories on Kaiser, was female, and it was just an absolute big baby. Do you know what I mean? Because people were going, that big dog, honestly, would lick you to death. It might have looked ferocious, but it was just a big cuddly thing, do you know?
But the great thing about Still Game is you could be in a particular episode, which is a classic episode, and it doesn't matter how big your part was in it. People will remember you for that episode. And the great thing about that, the Devil Dog was, of course, attacked. That great scene where Winston's getting on the bus, and he's like, if I wasn't getting on this bus, I'd do this and do this, and the bus could. It's just hysterical. So that obviously, so people remember that episode. So therefore, they remember you being in it. Now you did a couple of episodes, though, didn't you?
Excuse me, I've done the golf one as well. Excuse me. I prefer the golf episode actually, because we're in it that wee bit longer, and I don't know if I'm telling stories for the bush here, but I'm going to. But James Young, who plays, oh God, was it Tambo? Gaubo. He's Gaubo beside me. So I know James.
Come on, Kate Bush, man. Kate Bush, is that him?
Bush, man, right? But he's come in, right? So right away I had the F, the Glasgow, on your knuckles, that's kind of what that stands for, those 4 dots. So I remember he comes in and I've got that in my hands like that, and he's like, are they real tattoos, Garry? I'm like, no. But when he walked in, I think he's got a blue Burberry hat on in the scene. But see, when he came into the changing room, he swapped it for a cream one. He actually had a cream Burberry hat on, and that was his costume. I was like, you could just go dressed like that, you'd be fine. So I know it was the golf one I thoroughly enjoyed. I really enjoyed that. I'm sure I'd seen all that when I was playing pissed and stuff like that, and I've got the gun and all that at Winston. It was good fun.
And what was the reaction in the street to the character? And
again, it wasn't one of those things that the minute the episode went out, people would be like shouting it, but you would get your odd chant and stuff like that. But over the years, people will always be, and I think when I went into River City, people put 2 and 2 together and went, is that the guy that was in Still Game as well? Do you know what I mean? Because Gabriel's pretty different for the old Ned, no? And
I want to come on to touch on River City and the fact that you're basically the Bobby Ewing of River City, because you came back.
Mere comebacks
and it was actually clever the way they done it, because at first you would think that was sort of ridiculous, and if they were going to bring somebody back, it had to be the Angel Gabriel, didn't it? It just fitted. But we'll come to how that came about, because you did tell me that there was a reason for that, and it was also a wee bit like, remember Randall and Hopkirk, deceased. Everybody's looking at me going, no, you cheeky bugger. I don't remember that.
But he doesn't remember Scotch and Rye, but remembers Randall and Hopkirk deceased.
Because it's short again, though. That's the only reason I know. My mum told me about it. So what happens after Still Game? Where did the journey take you?
I'm trying to think, like, still, geez, man, I've done kind of a few things like before. The Near Room, Small Faces, and I've done The Acid House. I've done a film called The Acid House.
Is that with Stephen McCall?
So Stephen, I was cast at first. Stephen had not long left drama college, and me and Stephen, he played, was it Alan Lindsay? Alan Lindsay played in River City. We were best pals. We were at youth theatre and stuff like that, you know, at school, and then our paths kind of separated. And then I remember meeting Stephen again, and it was a case of him going up for the Acid House, and that was that's brilliant. It's like we've both, our first job, we've both got a feature film and we're best mates in it. Do you know, bizarre, really bizarre. So that was, the Acid House was definitely after them two. And I'm trying to think that, Still Game was 2002. I'm trying to think what can I...
So at that point in your career, were you thinking, right, I want to go to Hollywood, I want to take this, I want to do big movies, or...
I never had that kind of, like that mindset. I was really... I don't want to make it sound... I could be quite selfish when I was that age for that point of view. Like, I had no responsibilities, I only had me that I was looking after at the time, my girlfriend at the time. And I had a desire. I went to London about 98, 99, and I stayed there for about 5-6 months, and I hated it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, the first couple of months I really enjoyed it. We would get up for different auditions and stuff like that, but you just find it can be the loneliest city in the world. So London and me, I mean, total respect to MD, because in my business, usually be an actor, I'm not saying it works for everybody, but you need to go to London, do you know what I mean? Because that's where the auditions are, that's where the work is, so to speak. But I would much rather be in a position to have a kind of half-decent established name and be able to base myself in Scotland and then kind of work up and down from London, do you know? Because like London, and now, that wee period in the 80s where people, they would be able to maybe afford houses and stuff like that in London now, whereas, you know what London's like now, do you know what I mean? It would cost you probably $1 million for like a room and kitchen in London now, you know? It's a different world than for what it was late 90s. So no, I came back up the road, not quite with my tail between my legs, but it was just like, no, that's not for me. And I always kind of had a Scottish-based agent, so I always done kind of wee bits and bobs between there, but I never try to kind of make it like my be-all and end-all. Don't get me wrong, I've got, you know, plenty of ambition, but it was that way where it's like, don't only be an actor, and you know, that way where it's like, that's all I want to do, that's all I want to do. There's so much more things in life as well, so if the work was coming and it was landing at my feet, great, but if it wasn't, it wasn't going to kill me.
So what were you doing in between when you weren't acting?
Everything, man. I sanded floors, I washed windies, I worked in a shop, I hundreds, you know what I mean? It was like, what was that all saying about thing with Master of all trades, but Master of nothing.
Jack of all trades, Master of none. It's funny that, imagine you were in your house and you just ordered somebody to come and do your floor or whatever, and this Ned for Still Game turns up.
Listen,
you're all right, mate.
But it was like me and Stephen, he's not so much an actor now, but Stuart Blythe, who was in, do you remember Tinseltown at the BBC done in the 90s? He was in Tinseltown, he was like one of the main men with Stephen Duffy at the time. So it was, it would be like, you know, what are you doing here? I'm just watching you on the telly last night, Scooter. Oh, just give me a different tip, here we go. And like fix their flooring. So that was, do you know, kind of grew up in working class Glasgow, so you're used to, do you know, I'm used to getting abuse.
There's a lot of great actors come out of Glasgow, come out of Scotland, but who's been your kind of acting heroes, like homegrown?
Homegrown, it needs to be Peter Mullen. It's just... I remember at Langside College as well, when I was getting taken to see like, Major Barber and all these kind of classics, so to speak, but being a young kind of Glaswegian guy, I'd be like that, sitting going like, what is this? This is just so boring. And then I remember seeing The Fridge for the first time, which was Peter Mullen's short film, but I'd also seen... Like,
somebody's stuck in the fridge, and they keep that, it's on YouTube, check it out.
I'm sure it is on YouTube, like 10-minute film, watch it. And there was another one as well, and I can't, it's The Close, it's called. If you get a chance to see that, it's The Close.
Is that in the similar kind of vein?
Oh no, it's really, really, really dark. I'm sure it's like, he's just he's just had a baby, but he finds out there's a pedo either upstairs or downstairs. So it's very, very, very dark movie, but it's him just kind of imagining what he wants to do to him, you know, and you don't know whether he's done it or he's imagining doing it because he's got this new baby in his hands. But I remember watching that and being like, dude, just stellar performance, you know what I mean? He's got everything, tremendous. And then I remember meeting him in Queen's Park one day where he was just getting, you know, sitting in his own thoughts, and I kind of went up to him and I said to him about being in Langside but being a bit disillusioned by what I see, and he just kind of was like, you know, stick with it, you know, just stick with it. If it's something that you want to do, then it'll work for you, do you know? And just getting advice off him at that age was just...
Oh, so I picked up, I thought you were telling him this.
Oh, aye.
Stick in!
Aye, stick in here, you'll do well, mate, don't worry, you'll be brilliant, aye.
I was totally confused there.
If anybody's seen Tyrannosaurus at Peter's in, if you get a chance, watch that. Again, it's very, very dark, but he's just... It's brilliant, isn't it? It's just so good.
Have you seen that one he's got out about the lighthouse?
No, I haven't. I know what you're talking about.
Have you guys seen it? It's called, it's out just now on Netflix, I think.
Is it on Netflix?
The Vanishing, it's called. And it's Gerard Butler and Peter Mullen and somebody else. And
You know, Frank's son Matthew's in it as well. I'm sure he's got a wee
Is that
part in
right?
it. Aye.
right,
I don't know how big the part is or anything, but I know he's in it.
and it's not a big ensemble. It's not a lot. It's one of the films where it just focuses on like 4 or 5 cast members, and it's brilliant, really eerie and scary.
Right, no, I'll need to watch it.
Really good. And Peter Malcolm, the Warhorse. My Name is Joe, which brings us to somebody whose name comes up almost every interview now. Is David Mackay. What's your memories of work with David Mackay?
Well, Mackay was the. I don't know if I'm telling stories.
David Mackay
to the
played
bush here.
Stookie years ago.
Do you remember Stookie? Or am I really showing my age?
I don't.
Right, Stookie was. But see, that's the thing. See, Children's Day. I would talk, see, with my own kid now, when you look at, like, for instance, my kid came up with me the other day and he said the word garbage, and I was like, what? Where's that coming from? But he's obviously watched Americanised. You know, when I was growing up, every regional accent you would hear on CITV or BBC, whatever it would be. I remember it was like Jossie's Giants, it was Newcastle. You had
Murphy's Mob.
a Murphy's Mob, Newcastle. So they were different, you know. I remember there was one set in Yorkshire. So you were hearing all these kind of British accents when you were growing up. Even things like, even Brookside years ago, that was the original thing, so you were hearing Scouse accents growing up. Whereas I just think for kids nowadays, there's not enough regional TV. Do you know, it was like, there was American like TV programmes that you watched back then, but you were kind of surrounded by this kind of like British culture, and I genuinely believe Britain probably done the best children's TV, still do you know, but back then. So I just think that's a bit of a pity. I wish, you know, we need to get up the gears with that again.
If you look at us programmes like we had back in Grange Hill, for instance, which introduced heroin and the dangers of heroin in a kids show.
Totally.
It was so, and at that time there was only 3 channels probably on at that time, so everybody watched it, and that's why there's so many viewers, and that's why I think they were so big. Then all these nowadays, it's just so many different channels. It's hard to find something that's event television, isn't it? That you can go to your work the next day and say, "Did you see that last night?"
Absolutely.
And it's quite sad that, you know. But who are your acting heroes out with Scotland then? So
out with Scotland, it's hard to say. There's a lot of actors I really, really admire, but I'm sure I said this to you in the last show. The actor that made me when I was first starting out, that was just like that way, wow, was Gary Oldman. I loved Gary Oldman. I remember seeing The Firm when I was about 14, 15, the original Firm. It's about football hooligans, and he was just tremendous in it, do you know. And then again, a working class Londoner, when you see the rest of his family, you're like, my God. If you ever see Nil By Mouth, it's kind of an autobiography of the storyline of his and with the world he came from, which was just nuts, but yet, you know, he's just went on to achieve. I think he's a very, very good actor. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot.
So you can do a Ronaldo and put your
Put that back, swap now, there. That. Yeah,
there we go.
Like that.
Right,
Right.
So now to relax, let's talk about Frank Gallacher, because Frank's one of the really popular, a lot of popular characters in River City, but Lenny Murdoch's one of the most popular characters. What's it like working with Frank?
He's the man. Brilliant. Love working with Frank. Really, really love working with Frank. Again, the golden years, I'm sure I've said that to you before, was a period where I kind of had a lot of stuff with Frank. There was God, who was the other actor that came in at that time? Anyway, it was a lot of kind of drug storylines and different storylines. And when I got a script, when it landed in your door and you knew you were working with Frank, or it would be storylines concerning Frank, you get that wee bit more excited. It was much more fun to play than kind of domestic storylines, you know, where it would be something's wrong with Layla, or, you know, one of the kids, or here we go. No, that's terrible. I don't mean that. It all pays. But when you got those kind of storylines, they were the ones that you really look forward to.
Sure. Okay, now do we have any questions about River City you would like to ask Gary? Right, we've got a question over here. Now I'm going to come over to you. And what's your name?
Callum.
Sorry, Callum.
Yeah, Callum.
Okay,
yeah.
Callum. And where are you from?
Hey, mate. I'm from, live in East Lothian, but I travelled from Edinburgh, yeah. Round about Edinburgh area.
Thanks for coming down. What's your question?
You talking that, eh?
Oh, sorry? No, it's funny because it doesn't actually feel much louder into this.
No, it's, yeah, but it will be on the video, so...
On the thing, aye. No, I was
What's
just
your
wondering,
question for Gary?
what have you done, you know, since you've left River City?
Okay, let's come over here and get your mic.
That's the question. I kind of have the bits and bobs. I don't know how much I can tell you for. I used to work with an organisation called Street Cones. So pre-Christmas there, we're getting out of jails, and basically I used to work with prisoners in Shotts prison in Berlin. But this was with and I needed the money. It was a Christian organisation, so basically what the situation was, it was these particular Shotts prisoners would write down everything that was going on during lockdown for them, their experiences, give it to us, and then we kind of, developed this half-an-hour piece, filmed it in a church hall, and I get beamed back to Shotts Prison. But when I worked there before, you would never ever ask second names, So we had to do these video calls, basically, because you couldn't get into the prison. So we had to do video calls, but the full name was on them, and your curiosity would, and I can't name names, but your curiosity would be running an overdrive. So you'd Google them before, but this one particular day I went in and I sat down, and it was a guy called Malcolm Webster that I had to speak to. If he's got a chance later on, just Google Malcolm Webster. He's known as a Black Widow, right? He's a serial killer, but I had no idea who this guy was. So the other prisoners I was speaking to beforehand came across as quite nervous. You could just see in them how drained they were with the crime that they committed and this and that. But when I got to speak to this Malcolm character, he's just come on and he's just been like, "Hello, Garry. I've seen you in River City before." And I was just like, "Who the fuck's this?" And I genuinely see, looking down the guy's eyes, you could genuinely see just darkness, absolute darkness, but this pure charisma with it. So, unbeknownst to me, and I just know he's a wee bit different than that, but I comes out and I says to the girl, he was really charming, he was really charismatic. He was like, it's not every day you get to speak to a serial killer. I was like, what? So that was me. I've Googled, and I went up the road and went on YouTube and watched the documentary about Black Widow. If you got a chance, I spoke to this guy. But anyway, cut a long story short, we ended up doing the show, right, and spoke to the rest of the guys, because most of these people, I'm not God. It's not up to me to judge whatever that crime is. So if you can help them, it's a good thing, especially during lockdown. But anyway, we put on this show and they absolutely adored it. So about 4 or 5 days before Christmas, I got carried through the door. And I remember my mum coming up to see me about 2 minutes before. I went, "Here, Mammy." I was like, "You've got a lot of things in life." I went, "But beat that." I went, 5 murderers and 1 serial killer. "Oh, thanks for the work you've done, Garry. That was marvellous. That was that. That was this and that." But I was just like, "I'll put you in the drawer." But aye, so that was one of the weird jobs that I'd done during lockdown. And it was great, it paid quite well, and I got a lot out of it as well. And you genuinely, when you were video calling most of these prisoners, apart from fucking mental Malcolm, they were all so grateful. Do you know what I mean? Really, really grateful. And if you think how bad it was for us during lockdown, you'd imagine in that situation, if you were stuck in a cell for that period in time, that would be horrific. So that was the main thing that I'd done basically during lockdown.
So we've touched upon Still Game and the other stuff that you worked on, but we want to you came back to River City as the Angel Gabriel after he died. So tell us how that came about. It seemed the obvious choice to bring back Gabriel.
So what did first we were going to go, so when you come back to River City, I was like, what one? Do you know what I mean? I've like 4 comebacks, more comebacks and stuff.
Right, yeah, because a bit like Lenny, you've left and came back and left and came back.
God, it's not many times. I can't remember how many times, but I think three times I left. But then obviously when they bury you, that kind of,
Oh, you think, though, that's it?
It's all the amount of people that come up and go like that. "You don't come back to River City." I was like, "Well, not unless you can dig." Do you know what I mean? 6 feet, you're on to plums, kind of thing.
So who came up with the idea to bring Gabriel back?
I think from what I was told, I think it was Ian Robertson. I think he knew he was going to have this kind of storyline where he was going to go right downhill, and it was the idea is he going to kill himself kind of storyline. And I think he went through the different people, probably the likes of Una McLean. She'd have been a bit too old, you know what I mean, to kind of bring back and this and that. Because I think when he first said Gabriel, because I never had lots of stuff with Ian, we kind of clashed a wee bit in the programme. But I think because his title was like Angel Gabriel, he's dead, do you know what I mean? It's kind of...
Makes sense, yeah.
It totally made sense. But I'll be honest with you, at first when they mentioned it to me, I remember being a bit like, not too sure about that, because there's certain characters have went back as a ghost. And you mentioned David Mackay earlier on. After I had the phone call with Martin McCarty, who's the big producer at River City, I met Davy Mackay in the street, and Davy had kind of come up to me and went like that, "Did you hear about the ghost episode?" And I went, "Aye." And he just walked away. And I was like, Davy! Boofed, away he goes. So that left me like, oh no, what is this going to be like?
I never heard you because you were a ghost.
Do you know, that's true. Do you know what I mean? I signed him or something. But See, when I get the script, so I'd already agreed to do it, and I was going to do it. But when I got the script, it was written by an actress and scriptwriter called Anita Vitesse, and I just thought it was a lovely, lovely, lovely script. You know, you can really pick out the really good scripts in River City, and when that landed, and when I read the stuff that I had with Ian, I was quite excited. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it in a heartbeat. Yeah.
It was a really powerful storyline, sensitive storyline, but somehow they managed to make it funny.
Well, I think that's what it needed. You know, I was like, you've got to have when you're not in episodes, you don't read the particular scripts. But I actually watched the episode previous with, I mean, the scenes with him and Jimmy Chisholm in the episode before that. You know, I've really, really lovely stuff between the two of them. So when you get writing like that, you know, it's really, really easy for us actors. But it was a weird scenario because when we went back to film, we were slam bang in the middle of lockdown. And actors can be quite prissy, you know, they're always brought out their things, but it was like you couldn't even touch your props, you know, it was like your 2 metre distancing. Even the scenes with me and Ian, there was a lot of scenes with me and Ian I would have played a bit differently if it wasn't lockdown, because you're like, there's bits where I used to be in close to him, but it just wasn't allowed. Hence the reason, even when we're in the cinema, I'm a couple of chairs away from him because we couldn't be down each other's throats, so to speak. So that worried me slightly because the logistics with the two is. But when I seen I need to mention Ryan Graham, who was the director of that, he's been with the River City crew for years and years and years and years, and he's a really, really, really good filmmaker. But
He's one of the cameramen as well.
That's what I'm saying.
I know, Ryan.
But that was his directorial debut, so to speak. So
I didn't know that.
The fact that they gave him that big episode as well, do you know, I know he was in his element with that.
So did you have a bit of fun with the white suit and all that? Because it was a bit of like Randall and Hopkirk deceased, but nobody remembers that.
Well, when everybody mentioned the episode, when they were like that to me, what it's going to be like is like A Wonderful Life, or I'm old enough to remember. It shows you, I remember being Torquay when I was 17, watching the end of Dallas, and it was a daft episode where they showed JR what life would have been like in Dallas if he wasn't there, kind of thing. So when I read the script, that's the first thing I thought of, by the way, and Randall and Hopkirk deceased, because everybody kept going on about it was being like A Wonderful Life, but it wasn't. It was Randall and Hopkirk, especially with the white tin flute, and that episode of Dallas kind of stuck in my head when I first read it. That was the first thing I thought about.
And of course, Bobby walking out the shower, Bobby Ewan coming back for the dead as well. So, so what advice would you give to anybody out there or anybody that's watching that maybe want to get into acting? It's a bit different, I think, now.
Very, very different. But listen, to see if it's something in your heart and soul that you want to do, then nothing will stop you. Do you know, if you really, really want to do something in life, nothing will stop you. But what I will say to you is it's difficult. Do you know, there's just so many other ways to make money out there. And for the first 15, 20 years, it was all for the love of and for the love of the art. But at the end of the day, when you get kids, you know, you've got mouths to feed. You know, you've got other responsibilities. But again, if it's in your heart and soul and it's something you want to do, then pursue it. Do you know, because I've had some of the worst times down in my luck, do you know, wishing something would come up. And I've also had some of the best days of my life where you're just total euphoria because maybe there's a job that you really, really wanted that's come up, you know. So it's a great thing when it works, when it's up and running, yeah.
Now that things are opening up again, is there anything in the pipeline you've got coming up?
Got nothing fully in the pipeline. You're still basically auditioning constantly. I did an audition for Gangs of London about 3 weeks ago, and that was like a second recall for that, and another few things that I've auditioned for, but there's nothing, absolutely nothing set in stone yet. I was meant to be making a short film with a couple of actors. This was pre-lockdown. So hopefully, you know, we'll get word about that again, and that's something that we can get up and running now that things are starting to get back to normal, so to speak.
Do you know what I think would be a lot of fun? We're getting a lot of demand for these shows with the live audience in other places, not just here in Airdrie. And before lockdown, we were planning to go to several places with the boys, Jordan, Scott and Stephen, and also with the girls. And I think there's no reason why we can't do that with somebody like yourself and maybe somebody like Lenny Murdoch or something like that. What do you think, guys?
No, I would love that.
Or Ian Robertson, I think. You ask him.
I'm sure he would do it. Do you know what
I think if I were going to pair you up with somebody, I think it would be great if it was Frank, because you guys shared a lot of scenes together.
No, I had a lot of great stuff with Frank.
And of course, you mentioned a lot of the same, like Stephen McCall in Orphans. Of course, Frank was in Orphans, and he's worked with a lot of the same people over the years. But yeah, listen, Gary, this is the second time I've had a chat, and it's never boring. There's always something new to talk about, and I would love to do more of these with you. But thanks for coming back to Airdrie.
No bother, pleasure, absolute pleasure.
To the Moy Hall this time, lovely wee venue.
No, totally.
And we'll catch up with you the next time. And please do keep in touch and let us know what you're up to.
Of course, I will indeed. And listen, thanks for inviting me along, man. It's been a pleasure. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Garry.
There you go, everybody. Gary Sweeney. What a racket for 3 people, eh?
I know, absolutely. Mo, sit down now. You're not wanted.
So thanks again to you lot for watching at home as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for coming out to see us. We're going to sort out some pictures with Gary, and they're only $10.99 each for a picture. Nobody laughed there. I think they must think I'm serious. Make a fortune here.
Please do say it was $15.99.
He sells the sports socks and all that. So.
4 for £1. I do 4 for £1.
Thanks again, and thanks to our sponsors, Fast Signs. We'll see you the next time. Good night.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Harry. Brilliant.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you.